July 2026. America is literally melting. Over in Texas, electricity bills are hitting these absolutely shocking heights. In Arizona, people are collapsing right on the sidewalks. And out in California, the power is going out on purpose. Now, this isn't the plot of some sci-fi dystopian movie. This is the deadliest heatwave in modern U.S. history. And as we're going to see in this explainer, it exposed a really chilling reality that America didn't want to admit. Turns out, even the richest country on earth can't just buy its way out of the heat.
$900. Just let that sink in for a second. That was the cost of a single one-month electricity bill for some folks in Texas during this unprecedented disaster. You see, when your actual survival depends on an appliance running, the cost to run that appliance literally becomes the cost of living. And for way too many people, it was a price they simply couldn't pay.
And this was a massive, macro-level catastrophe. We watched terrifying scenes of people collapsing in the intense Arizona heat just because their bodies couldn't regulate the temperature anymore. In California, millions of people were plunged into the dark with rolling blackouts. We are talking about a complete systemic failure across the board, where the infrastructure of the wealthiest nation on the planet just buckled under the sun.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Part 1. America's deadliest heat wave. We really need to unpack how this wasn't just your normal hot summer, but a massive systemic failure from top to bottom.
Look at these shattered records. The sheer scale is just staggering. Phoenix, Arizona endured an unthinkable 32 consecutive days above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Down in Miami, it felt like 124 degrees when you factored in that crushing humidity. But you know what the most shocking metric might be? Seattle, a city historically known for its rain and super mild summers, hit 104 degrees. Absolutely nowhere was safe.
Let's move along and see how this actually built. It started kind of quietly in late June, when this massive heat dome parked itself directly over the entire U.S. and just refused to move. By early July, the CDC is already reporting over 1,800 heat-related hospitalizations. Then, boom, July 18th hits, and the California grid operator has to trigger rolling blackouts just to keep the whole system from collapsing. Imagine 2.3 million homes losing power on a 115-degree day. Hospitals are switching to generators, schools are shutting down, and by August 2nd, an unbelievable 22 states were under extreme heat warnings.
Now, the human toll here is just devastating. In Maricopa County, Arizona alone, coroners confirmed over 200 heat-related deaths. And the breakdown in those numbers is heartbreaking. 80% of the people who lost their lives were over the age of 65. The elderly were the brutal, tragic brunt of this disaster, which really highlights exactly who gets left behind when the grid fails.
Which brings us to part 2, the economics of survival. We need to zoom in from those big macro-level statistics and look at the real human stories. Because the harsh truth, this heatwave didn't hit everyone the same.
Take Robert, for instance. He's a 58-year-old roofer working in Dallas, Texas. He starts his shift at 5 a.m., right? But by 10 a.m., the roof he's standing on is 150 degrees. He literally watched his coworker go down with heat stroke right next to him. He noted, "We asked for water breaks. The boss says we'll get fired." For essential outdoor workers like Robert, trying to escape the heat meant risking their entire livelihood.
And then contrast Robert's outdoor peril with Eleanor's indoor crisis. Eleanor is 76, living alone in Ohio. She gets by on a monthly Social Security check of $1,340. Her July electricity bill, $847. As she so heartbreakingly put it, she had to make an impossible choice: food or air conditioning. She only survived by shutting off the AC and sitting in front of a $20 fan she bought from Walmart.
And for the homeless population, it was just utterly catastrophic. Out in Los Angeles, tent cities literally turned into ovens. Now, the government's standard advice was, go to a city cooling center. But think about the reality of that. To get to a cooling center, you need bus fare. When you don't even have the $2.50 to get on the bus, that cooling center might as well be on the moon. The standard safety nets just completely failed the most vulnerable.
So the crucial point we really need to take away here is that this pattern is impossible to ignore. The poor, the elderly, the construction and farm workers, the people who could least afford it ended up paying the absolute highest price. Meanwhile, wealthier folks simply set their smart thermostats to 65 degrees and paid the bill. This wasn't just a weather event. It was climate change operating with a harsh, unforgiving economic filter.
Okay, zooming back out to the big picture. How did the richest country on Earth let this happen? Part 3, why the grid failed.
When you look at the raw data, there are really three massive reasons for this systemic failure. First, our grid is ancient. The bulk of America's power grid was built way back in the 1960s for a completely different, much cooler climate. So when demand absolutely spiked in 2026, these 60-year-old transformers literally overheated and melted. Experts have been sounding the alarm on this for 20 years, and it mostly fell on deaf ears. Second, we have the new normal of our extreme climate. And third, the prioritization of profit. Let's dig a little deeper into those last two.
The scientists at NOAA were incredibly blunt about this new normal. They explicitly stated that what we lived through in July 2026 would have been biologically and meteorologically impossible just 30 years ago. Heat waves are now 5 times more likely to happen and 3 times hotter when they do. So this isn't some rare one-off anomaly. The scientists are telling us loud and clear, this is the future.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive tension surrounding that third reason: profit. On one hand, you have energy companies reporting record-breaking profits for the second quarter of 2026, while rolling out rate hikes of up to 40% across 12 different states. The companies justify this as demand pricing, which is a standard economic response when everybody suddenly needs power at once. On the other hand, the American public, who were actively suffering through deadly heat, viewed it as straight-up price gouging. Now, we aren't here to take a side in this explainer, but it's vital to impartially highlight how deeply fractured a system gets when a literally life-saving utility operates as a for-profit commodity in the middle of a disaster.
But amidst all this systemic breakdown and slow government response, it's not all doom and gloom. It's a story deeply about human resilience. Part 4, how communities stepped up. Because when top-down solutions failed, the bottom-up response was genuinely incredible.
The boots-on-the-ground mutual aid was just so inspiring to see. Down in Houston, local churches threw their doors wide open, acting as 24/7 cooling shelters with zero questions asked. In Detroit, neighbors were literally stringing extension cords all the way across the street, just so the house next door could run a fan. In Phoenix, you had volunteers standing out in the baking sun at bus stops, handing out free ice packs and water. And society adapted on the fly. An entire generation of kids learned a really hard lesson about extreme weather. Summer school shifted to night classes. Outdoor sports completely canceled. Playgrounds were totally empty at noon. These kids now know unequivocally that August means danger.
We also saw an amazing shift in how people powered their own homes. 300%. That's the massive spike we saw in sales for solar panels and home battery backups right after the heat wave. People basically realized they couldn't just rely on the main grid anymore. Oh, and portable AC units completely sold out nationwide in just 48 hours.
So, what happens next? The 2026 heat wave really broke that fundamental American promise, the idea that money can always buy safety and comfort. Which brings us to part 5, the cost of tomorrow. Because climate experts are treating 2026 not as a peak, but as a warning shot. Projections showed that by the year 2035, what we used to casually call a 100-year heat wave could start happening every 3 years. The timeline is accelerating incredibly fast, and our window to actually adapt is shrinking.
Now, the solutions do exist, but they are astronomically massive and unbelievably expensive. We are looking at an estimated $2.5 trillion just to upgrade the national grid so the transformers stop melting. We're going to need sweeping programs to subsidize air conditioning for low-income families so people like Eleanor aren't forced to choose between groceries and a working fan. We literally have to rebuild our cities to be heat-proof, which means massive tree planting initiatives and painting roofs with reflective coatings. But right now, in Washington, Congress is still just arguing about how to pay for it.
And you know who isn't waiting around for Congress to figure it out? The financial sector. The stark financial reality is hitting us fast, as big insurance companies are already starting to pull completely out of states like Texas and Florida. Their stated reason is blunt. It's simply too risky to insure. The reality is we can't outrun the heat anymore, not financially and not geographically. When the power goes out, we're all just human. Sweating, waiting, and hoping. We have to face this together.
So I want to leave you with a really critical question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Should the government step in and actually cap energy prices during climate disasters? Is electricity a fundamental human right when temperatures become lethal? Or should the free market always dictate the cost of demand? I really want to hear what you think about this, so let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you think this breakdown matters, please share this explainer. Because next summer, the next broken grid, and the next deadly heat wave, it could very well be your city. Stay safe out there and stay cool.